Hey folks, welcome back to Crypto Cash. I wanted to make a new series of videos here because I'm getting tons and tons of requests to get daily updates on the currencies that you guys are wanting to do. So, Dent, new kind of network, Vtho, there's a good handful of them that I want to make sure to cover, but it does take enough. It takes a decent amount of time to make separate videos. So what I figure I'm going to do is just go ahead and integrate them all together to maybe perhaps try to do a daily analysis. So if you guys like this, let me know if it's up your alley and you're enjoying the content, and I'll continue to perhaps do this moving forward. But today we're just going to go ahead and take a look at. We're going to look at Dent. We're going to look at NKN as well as Vtho, just to kind of get a quick analysis. This is strictly technical analysis, nothing extra. Pretty much just kind of drawing a comparison to Bitcoin, so you kind of know what might be advantageous for an entry point, and obviously just what works best for you moving forward. Because I know you guys have a lot of holdings, and the market's been scaring a lot of people recently. So hopefully this sheds some light on that for you. Let's take a look. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at the technicals now. Let's go ahead and start with Bitcoin, just so you can kind of get a baseline on what it looks like, because of course Bitcoin is the catalyst for everything that's happening. And as we can kind of see here, we're trending along up in the 63, 64,000 range, and then of course we had this massive sell-off on Saturday. Now this sell-off essentially was a culmination of a lot of different things, but it caused the price to come all the way down as low as 51,000. Then it eventually consolidated, worked itself into a channel here between 57 and right around 53,000. And just recently, we saw this too yesterday and the day before. There's a continuous sell-off to get to an all-time low of 47,500. That's pretty insane considering the fact that we're still considered to be in a bull market. So that being said, I wanted to show that to you, of course, just kind of set the baseline, but let's go ahead and take a look at the other three topics of conversation here today. So we're going to cover Dent, which is Dent Wireless, NKN, which is a new kind of network, and Vtho, which is Vethor token. First things first, we're going to go ahead and just take a quick look at Dent. Now, Dent is one of my most popular requests. I have a large community over on Telegram, so please reference that. I'll link that in the description below, but they're really concerned with all their holdings because they have so much invested. So why don't we go ahead and take a look here. Now, obviously, one thing to note, you can see the trend here, right? So take a look. This is Saturday, sell off. Then we got a little bit of consolidation here, and it didn't hold, and investors got nervous, and they all pulled out. And of course, we saw yesterday what happened as well with the news for the capital gains tax. That really screwed things up pretty big for Bitcoin and a lot of other things, because people are really concerned about paying double on their capital gains. Now, that being said, looking at Dent here, this is a 15-minute chart, by the way, and I always like to look at the 15-minute chart because to get perspective on kind of what's going on. And then I like to work my way from top to bottom. So we'll look at the one-day chart next, and then the 4-hour chart, and back to the 15 to kind of see if we can find a good entry point for you. So let's look at the one-day chart now. Obviously, it's quite high. A lot of movement in the past few weeks. Let me look at this. The 15th of April, it was at an all-time high of 0.0033, and it shot all the way up to 0.022. So that made people pretty darn happy. But nonetheless, it's kind of crazy the way it is right now. So taking a look here, there's a lot of price movement, of course. So it makes sense that it was selling off, but it shouldn't have sold off this hard. So if it wasn't for yesterday's news, you could say, I feel like it would still be in consolidation, trying to work its way back up. So right now, it's just getting hammered. But it's good news because it's extremely low pricing right now. Pricing you'll never be able to find likely ever again later. So just keep that in mind. But why don't we go ahead and take a look at the technicals now. So first of all, these are three moving averages. We got the 50 moving average, 100-day, and the 200-day moving average. Now the 50-day moving average got destroyed, obviously, and that was with the news. That should have worked as a support level, but it works now as a potential resistance. What's kind of nice is we see the 100-day moving average does appear to be a support level, and again, that was the absolute lowest that the price hit. And what is that? 0.005. Okay. Another thing to note too before we look at smaller time frames is the RSI. That is a nice RSI. We're looking at relative strength index of about 33, 34. And of course you can see the extreme bearish momentum here on the MACD, the moving average, convergence, divergence. Okay. So again, not looking terrible in my opinion. I think this is just fine. All things considered, just means that we get a really good affordable buy-in right now. So if you can afford to do so, I do feel like it would be advantageous to get in at this point. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 4-hour chart now. With Dent, all right, so this is just a quick line that I threw in there earlier. In fact, that might be from my most recent review, because that was the support level that was holding. As you can see, it held pretty good until the news. So honestly, that should still be a support level. It could potentially work as a resistance, so let's just be mindful of that. It might be a new resistance line. I don't foresee that being the case. I think this will jump up and come back as soon as Bitcoin continues to stabilize. Just be aware that the market might be a little funny over the next few weeks with all these large investors pulling out. And it's kind of ironic too, because they're going to be taxed on the fact that they're pulling out their funds. This should basically incentivize people to actually hold on to their currency longer, right? So for you guys holding on for dear life, for lack of better terms, you're in probably pretty good shape still. Now, adding to your position at this point might be a good consideration though. And let's go ahead and take a look at that. So, 4-hour chart, we can see all the moving averages or above. Makes sense for the situation right now. We don't need to worry about those too much, but they will be tested soon. So we want to be aware of that, but I don't think they're going to be super cause for concern because again, these moving averages matter more on Bitcoin than they do on Dent. But looking at the RSI, again, still very low. In fact, it hit like a 25 yesterday when the news came out and it hit its lowest. And then you can also see the moving average convergence divergence. This is usually a really good sign. When you see this lower line trying to intersect with the upper line, that is fantastic. That typically means that there's going to be some bullish momentum. And oftentimes when these lines cross, very good things happen. So pay attention to that as well. So we could see a breakout soon, depending on, again, what Bitcoin has to offer. But all in all, these indicators look pretty decent. So just be mindful of the the support and resistance level at approximately 0.0077. If you watch my previous video, that's still the same support and resistance line. And once it passes that, make sure that you wait for confirmation. So if I were to take entry based on these numbers right now, I would simply state to make sure that we wait for confirmation above 0.0077. And what I mean by that is to just make sure that the line comes above and it holds. In other words, we're going to look at the 15-minute chart, but we want to make sure that the price is essentially confirmed, and it has to be tested with it no less than 30 minutes, right? And if you followed me before and you've watched my previous videos, you'll hear that that's a consistent thing. It just works really well for me to be able to get that confirmation. So why don't we take a look here at the 15-minute chart so you can see what I mean by that. So really quick, just before we get into that, you can see these moving averages are starting to come down a little bit. Now, they don't carry as much weight as the 4-hour chart, but the good news is the price is staying above the VWAP line, which is this blue line here. And it's also, here I'll get a little closer for you, it's also staying above the 50 and 100-day moving average. Okay, so these are all good signs. But again, there's a 0.0077 line up here we need to cross. Say, for example, the price continues to trend upwards and comes above this line. You want to make sure that it closes 2 15-minute green bars. What I mean by that, if you look at this chart here, these two right here, for example, these are 2 15-minute green bars, right? So if we see the price come above and the 2 15-minute green bars close above this line, then I would recommend taking entry at that point, because that's what I refer to as confirmation. So if you get confirmation knowing that going into it, and you see that, then that would be a good indicator. Also bear in mind too, to get to this point, you'd have to pass the 200-day moving average, which would also be a good little milestone. So if the price just continues to make higher highs and works its way up, likely over the next, 24 hours, perhaps 12 hours, then when the price comes above, wait for confirmation, add to your position, but please don't go all in. Again, I always recommend not doing that. it really does depend on your positioning, right? So if you're planning to do a trade that is forever, right? Holding on for dear life, you want this to go to $1. That's fine. Put your whole position in there if you feel comfortable with that. But I like to wait to, get that confirmation, right? So say we get the confirmation and the price rejects and comes down, then you only out that small portion that you put in, right? Then what you do next is you want to wait for an additional confirmation, and you got to keep making smaller steps to get to your goal. All right. So just keep in mind, you want to be careful and slowly add to your position, because I honestly don't like going all in personally. It really depends on your big picture though. Now, if you're a short-term swing trader, anything less than just say 15 to 30 days, then maybe take a 25% position and then continue to add to it as you see it making higher highs. Okay. Again, most of this depends on how Bitcoin is doing. So take a look at Bitcoin again. You can see very similar trends here on the 15-minute chart. It almost looks identical. Another thing to note too, and this is probably the best thing to look at, is the 4-hour chart on Bitcoin. Take a look at the 4-hour chart and see how it's responding to the moving averages, because these things tend to be very, very substantial. In other words, if you look kind of at the history here of Bitcoin, see that 200-day moving average? This is one of the really strongest resistance and support lines. So it worked as a support line for a long time. Now it's trading under, and this is going to be one of the biggest milestones for it to pass. So if you're going to pay attention to anything and take entry, for example, wait until the price on Bitcoin goes above the 200-day moving average. We're a little ways away from it. I'm sure it'll take a few days to get there, but just say we jump above and it holds for just say 2 4-hour green bars, then that would be a good indication to possibly consider a long position. And at that point, you might want to go all in on just say Dent, for example, if that's the one you're trading. Again, try to do yourself a favor and go back and forth between Bitcoin and whichever currency you're trading, because there's almost always a similar correlation and they work together, which is why you want to pay attention to the 4-year cycle. I did make a video regarding that. I'll go ahead and link that up above. And that is essentially just something to be really mindful of, because the 4-year chart tells us where we're at right now. And right now we are in we're in altcoin season. So this is the time when you want to buy altcoins and essentially sell them for Bitcoin. So again, check out that video. It might shed some light on what I'm referring to here. Okay. Anyways, so that's kind of the recommendation there for Dent. Okay. Now let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit. Let's take a look at a new kind of network. Now, a new kind of network is kind of nice because I've noticed that let me pull up the 15-minute chart on this here, get about the same size. And what I want to note here is the fact that NKN doesn't exactly follow Bitcoin identically, like most of them do. So if you look at this here, you see what Bitcoin, massive sell-off right here, consolidation, another sell-off. You go to new kind of network, massive sell-off, but major correction, right? And then of course another sell-off. But that's the great thing about this. New kind of network, I think, follows kind of its own set of rules, and it has its own set of followers. And again, if you recall from my other videos, they're heavily influenced by social media too. So definitely check some alternative resources there and look at the sentiment from with new kind of network and see what's going on. But when it starts gaining popularity, we start seeing spikes like this. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at the 1-day chart on new kind of network. I love looking at this. Look at that. Wow. Hovering around 2 cents for months, and straight out of nowhere jumps all the way up to what? $1.49. So hopefully nobody got in at that point, but suffice to say, the numbers here are quite interesting. So you'll notice also too that cryptocurrency has a common trend here. Sharp increase followed by a severe sell-off, and then consolidation and potentially a rinse and repeat. So that's what we're hoping for here. I do feel again that if Bitcoin hadn't done what it did, we'd probably be in a second hard push to try to beat its all-time high. Anyways, so looking at the one-day chart for a new kind of network, first of all, to note, RSI is kind of right in the middle, right around 50. This is good. That's a good point, a good place to be. Anything lower than 70 I feel is a good entry for a long position. We're still above all the moving averages, which is also beneficial. And the MACD does appear to still be considered bearish. So again, be mindful of that. I do feel like until we hit above a few points on the 4-hour chart, we will likely still be in a bearish sentiment for new kind of network for a little while longer. But I also still feel that the price is very affordable right now. This is a good price for something like this because it's again, maybe reference my my review video of new kind of network, but it's got a lot of potential. I actually do believe in this one. I think it's going to do well. Now, let's go to the 4-hour chart and take a quick look here. So we see its all-time high up here. We're coming down here, and let's take a look at some of these resistance and support levels, because these are the ones that I've drawn up from before. And again, right there is a sell-off for Bitcoin. Okay, so hadn't that happened, I do feel like this channel would have continued, and it possibly would have came up and came past these moving averages. But looking at the RSI, let's go ahead and start with that. It's always a good indicator. We're at 42, 43, somewhere in that range there. It's a pretty good number. Again, good entry point. Anything under 70 is ideal. Looking at the moving average, effectively the same thing. The only difference is this is starting to level out a little. So in the 4-hour chart, which I feel is probably the most effective, it feels like things are on a good shift here, where it's trying to shift upwards towards bullish momentum. Furthermore, to note, the 200-day moving average right here was tested 3 times and rejected. That's a really good sign, because again, the 200-day moving average carries the most weight, the most strength. And of course, we got the 50-day moving average and 100-day moving average. We're currently trading below that. So be on the lookout for how the price reacts to the 50-day moving average here in the near future. It could very well be tested next few hours. So be mindful of that. And then furthermore, why don't we go ahead and take a look at the 15-minute chart and kind of identify perhaps some good entry points here. So RSI looks good. MACD, honestly, the MACD isn't super important on a 15-minute chart, so I don't really carry a lot of weight with that. On the 15-minute chart or lower, the volume-weighted average prices are the most impactful, in my opinion. So we look at the VWAP. It's kind of trading right on the line. So it's going a little bit below with a small variance, a little bit above with a small variance, and staying above these 2 support levels. So if this can break the 200-day moving average, then what I would maybe recommend doing is consider adding to your position. But before we do that, let's go ahead and just double check the support and resistance lines here. So let's extend that out here, because this was tested a few times. All right. So taking a look at this here, again, as I mentioned before, the price moves above this level once it hits the 200-day moving average, and it's tested at least, again, 2 times with a closing in 2 solid green bars, then that would be a cause for a potential entry point. And back to what I've said before, same thing applies. If you're going all in forever and you're putting everything you want into a new kind of network, and you know you're going to hold on for a long time, then this might be a good point to find a good entry. I would wait, however, until it tests this resistance level of 0.69. So basically 69 cents. If it comes above 69 cents and stays and essentially closes, just say 30 to 60 minutes, an hour would be better, but just say it closes above that line for that long, then that would be a good consideration to go ahead and go all in. Again, I never recommend all in if you're going to do a short-term swing trade, anything less than 15 or 30 days, especially not on day trading. You should only shoot for maybe a 1 to 5% gain. But something like this, I do feel like there is strong potential. There's a lot of good sentiment, market sentiment, as well as the product I think is really good. So, an all-in position wouldn't be all that terrible to consider, again, once it's past a significant resistance line. 200-day moving average is significant, but this resistance line has been tested a handful of times is also extremely important. Okay. But meanwhile, even though it's not super influenced by Bitcoin, still reference this, make sure that Bitcoin passes the 200-day moving average before you take entry on anything. That's just my own recommendation there, because that seems to be the biggest number for Bitcoin overall. All right, next up, let's go ahead and take a look at Vtho, which is Vethor token. And Vtho is an exciting one. I've always liked this one for a while. Made some decent money on it a couple months ago. But the bottom line here is that there's really good price action, a lot of volatility, and I do think it's going to come back up again. But you want to note kind of how it reacts. So take a look at this here. First of all, this is the sell-off on Saturday. Not as dramatic as you would expect, right? It only went down, 0.005 total, and recovered quickly. Went to consolidation and again sold off because of the overall market sentiment. But as you can kind of tell, it's ramping back up a little bit faster than Bitcoin and others. So I do feel like the variance between Vtho and BTC Bitcoin are significantly different enough where you don't have to rely as much on Bitcoin for Vtho to be helpful or beneficial. Keep in mind, VET is also the same too, so these two tokens essentially are working similarly, and VET has a tendency of bouncing back and recovering too, just like Solana does, where it's not super dependent on Vtho. It's got such a good enough blockchain for it to be able to continue on its own. And this is essentially the gas for that. So taking a look at this here, why don't we go ahead and just quickly look at the one-day chart. So they were trading for 0.0007 for a long time. Got a little popularity here when VET surfaced, and the rest is history. Look at sharp ramp up. So all in all, it's been looking pretty good. And as you can see, the 50-day moving average recently was tested, but rejected, stayed above. So that's a good sign. The RSI is right around 48, also good. Not high, not low. It's not oversold, not overbought. The one thing to note though is the moving average does appear to be bearish in that sense. The moving average convergence divergence, the MACD. So just be mindful of that. I don't foresee that being an issue because that's overall basically just telling us that Bitcoin had its major sell-off yesterday. That's a normal reaction. So I wouldn't worry about that. Let's look at the 4-hour chart though, because this carries the most weight. And first thing to see, what do you see here on the 4-hour chart? I see a really attractive RSI at 42. That's nice and low. It's a good consideration for entry. I see the MACD also looking very good. Look at that. It looks like it's curving up. It's moving in upward fashion. The momentum lines are coming down, or coming up rather, from a low point. So the MACD looks very, very good. And then looking at the actual 4-hour chart right here, obviously we got some resistance lines to work with here. So again, if the price can come up over the 100 and 200-day moving average, then I think we'll be in pretty good shape. Again, this 50-day moving average isn't as important. See if we can identify some support lines. So we got, this is a strong resistance back here. It's been tested a couple of times. We could say that's also a very strong support line. Okay, so look at this here. Let's go ahead and go a little closer. We've got a major support and major resistance level. So the major resistance, that's the one we're going to try to break through, right, if you're going long. And it's 0.022. So that being said, the price being where it's at right now, right at 0.16, we'd want to wait, obviously, for confirmation above and beyond the 100 and 200-day moving average. Once it breaks above, if I was just say swing trading this, a short-term swing trade, I would wait for confirmation. I would add maybe 25 to 30% to my position right around here as soon as the price comes above and holds for 30 minutes. Okay, again, you want to shift over to the 15-minute chart first when you do that, but I'm just speaking hypothetically on the 4-hour chart. Look at these numbers here. you want to make sure that the price is above these two moving averages. Okay, so let's go ahead and go a little bit shorter now. Let's take a look at the 15. So 15-day moving average, 15-minute chart basically tells us that we're above VWAP, but we just dropped below. So VWAP's working as a support line for now. It's getting tested, which is not a big deal. So if we again rise up and go over this 200-day moving average, that would be a good point for entry. I would add a small position after we get confirmation for 30 minutes above this line. And if the price continues to trend upwards and eventually passes the resistance line of 0.022, at that point I would add more to my position. And again, depending on what you're planning to do, if you're just doing a swing trade, you would obviously want to just add a, maybe 50% at best at that point to your position and start selling off as you get closer to your goal. If you're holding on for dear life, then you might want to consider taking entry right around here after it passes the 200-day moving average, because you see it bounced off of that initially. But if this VWAP continues to hold and all the support lines, all the moving averages start working as a support line underneath the price, that's going to likely carry it to make sure that it continues to make higher highs. So it's up to you on when you want to take entry, but for me, I would take a small position as soon as it passes the 200-day moving average and holds for just say 30 minutes. And then I would take a larger entry once it crosses above 0.022. That'd be my thoughts there. So hopefully you found this beneficial. I wanted to, kind of bring this to your attention and, let me know in the comments below if this is beneficial for you. Merging a few different ones into one video is kind of easier. It helps me cover more information and obviously help you as a viewer a little bit better, I feel. So let me know if you like this, and obviously join me on our Telegram chats. I got some awesome community there, some really great people. And I can tell you that you'll be happy if you joined up, because we all talk and enjoy things like this, right? So if you like cryptocurrency, go ahead and jump on in there. And again, like and subscribe if you haven't already. I want to thank you very much for your time and watching this. And again, please let me know your thoughts if you like this and find this to be beneficial. Thank you. Hope you have a good rest of your day. We'll see you in the next video.